Close your eyes for just a moment. Imagine standing on a dusty hilltop in southern Turkey 12,000 years ago. Before cities, before farms, before writing. The wind is cold. The land is wild. And all around you, massive carved stone pillars rise from the earth like silent giants, older than anything we thought possible. This place has no name yet. No king built it, no army protected it, and yet here it stands, enormous, perfectly constructed, absolutely unexplained. This is Göbekli Tepe. And everything you were ever taught about the dawn of human civilization may be completely wrong. Because according to every history book ever written, 12,000 years ago, humans were simple, primitive, struggling just to survive. They hunted animals. They gathered berries. They had no cities, no leaders, no architecture, no organized religion. They were, as historians called them, just wanderers, nomads living day to day. But then, in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt climbed a hill in southeastern Turkey, and what he found there shattered everything. Massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing 20 tons, carved with animals so detailed, so precise, they look like the work of master sculptors, not cave dwellers. These weren't scattered rocks. This was a deliberately designed, magnificently engineered temple complex, built by people who supposedly had no tools, no cities, no civilization. And here's the question that will haunt you for the rest of this video. Who built this? And more importantly, why? How did primitive hunter-gatherers organize thousands of workers? How did they cut, transport, and raise 20-ton stones without wheels, without cranes, without metal tools? And why, after centuries of use, did they deliberately bury the entire site under thousands of tons of soil and simply walk away? What were they hiding? What were they afraid of? And what does this ancient temple tell us about the true origins of human civilization? If you love uncovering history's greatest secrets, secrets that textbooks ignore and mainstream archaeology refuses to fully explain, then hit subscribe right now. Every week, we dig into the buried mysteries of the ancient world, the stories that were lost, hidden, or deliberately forgotten. This channel is your guide to the truth beneath the surface. Now, let's go back. Back further than Rome, further than Egypt, further than Mesopotamia, back to a world so ancient, most historians didn't even believe it existed. Chapter 1. The discovery that broke history. The year is 1963. American archaeologist Peter Benedict is surveying the hills of southeastern Turkey. He notices something odd. Strange mounds on the landscape. He assumes they are abandoned medieval cemeteries. He makes a note, files his report, and moves on. For 30 years, nobody looks twice at that lonely, wind-swept hill outside the city of Şanlıurfa. Then comes 1994. Klaus Schmidt, a German archaeologist from the German Archaeological Institute, reads Benedict's old report. Something in it bothers him. He decides to investigate personally. Schmidt arrives at the hill locals call Göbekli Tepe, which in Turkish means Potbelly Hill. He begins to dig. And within hours, his hands are trembling. The stones he uncovers are not medieval. They are not Roman. Carbon dating would later reveal they are nearly 12,000 years old, predating Stonehenge by 6,000 years, predating the Egyptian pyramids by 7,000 years, predating the invention of writing by 5,000 years. This single hill rewrote the entire timeline of human history. Schmidt reportedly said, and this quote became famous in archaeology circles, "In 10 years, everything we know about the prehistoric world will have to be completely rewritten." He was right. But what he uncovered over the next 20 years of excavation was even more astonishing than anyone, including Schmidt himself, had ever imagined. The site contained not one temple, but at least 20 distinct circular enclosures, each one carefully arranged. Each one filled with towering T-shaped pillars up to 6 meters tall, and carved into those pillars a zoo of ancient animals, foxes, snakes, vultures, scorpions, wild boars, lions, and strange abstract symbols that no one has yet been able to fully decode. This was not a campsite. This was not a simple burial ground. This was a complex, sophisticated, intentionally designed sacred space, built by people we were told were not capable of such things. Chapter 2. The Impossible Builders. Here is where the real mystery begins. Because to build Göbekli Tepe, someone had to solve problems that modern engineers still find impressive today. The limestone pillars were quarried from bedrock nearly 500 meters away from the site. Some of these pillars weigh between 10 and 20 tons each. They are massive, moving a 20-ton stone block across rocky, uneven terrain, without wheels, without pulleys, without metal tools of any kind, is not a task for a small family group. Archaeologists estimated would have required hundreds, possibly thousands of coordinated workers. Workers who needed to be fed, organized, directed, and motivated over long periods of time. But wait. The accepted historical narrative says that 12,000 years ago, there were no villages, no surplus food, no leadership structures capable of organizing thousands of workers. So either the history books are wrong about prehistoric society, or Göbekli Tepe was built by a civilization so advanced, so organized, that it has been completely erased from our records. Some researchers believe the answer lies in religion itself. That Göbekli Tepe didn't come after civilization, it actually created civilization. That the temple came first, and society built up around it. Think about that for a moment. We always assume that humans first settled down, grew food, built villages, and then created religion and temples. Göbekli Tepe flips that completely upside down. The archaeologists who study this site believe that the need to build and maintain this sacred space actually forced our ancestors to invent agriculture, permanent settlements, and social organization. Religion didn't come from civilization. Civilization came from religion. This one discovery on one dusty Turkish hilltop changed our entire understanding of what it means to be human. Chapter 3. The carvings that shouldn't exist. But let's talk about what's actually carved on these pillars. Because the artwork at Göbekli Tepe is not what you'd expect from primitive nomads scratching pictures into rock. The carvings are three-dimensional. They are deeply recessed into the stone with extraordinary skill. Animals are shown in motion, mid-leap, mid-strike, full of energy and anatomical accuracy. There are vultures with outstretched wings, serpents coiling down pillar edges, a headless human figure, possibly depicting death or sacrifice, and strange H-shaped symbols that appear repeatedly across different pillars. These H symbols have baffled researchers for decades. They appear too consistent, too deliberate to be decorative. Some scholars believe they represent an early form of symbolic communication, possibly proto-writing. If that theory is correct, and the evidence increasingly suggests it may be, then writing itself began not in Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago, but here, in these hills 12,000. There are also two central pillars in each enclosure that stand taller than the rest. These central pillars have arms, human arms, carved into the stone, and hands with fingers, resting on belt-like carvings. These pillars are not just decorations. They appear to represent beings, perhaps gods, perhaps ancestors, perhaps something else entirely. They stand at the center of each circle like silent, watchful presences. Were the people of Göbekli Tepe worshipping these stone beings? Were they reenacting rituals in their presence? Or were these pillars meant to house spirits, in a tradition older than any known religion on Earth? One of the most stunning carvings is called the Vulture Stone, Pillar 43. It shows a vulture holding what appears to be a ball, possibly a human head, above a headless human body. Some researchers believe this carving is actually the world's oldest astronomical map, depicting the night sky from around 10,900 BC, including the star cluster known as the Pleiades. If this interpretation is correct, the builders of Göbekli Tepe were not just artists or priests. They were astronomers. They were tracking the stars 12,000 years ago with enough precision to carve their observations in stone. Chapter 4. The Great Burial. A deliberate vanishing. Here is perhaps the strangest part of the entire Göbekli Tepe story, and it is the part that haunts archaeologists more than anything else. Around 8,000 BC, roughly 4,000 years after the site was first built, someone made a decision. A massive, organized, deeply deliberate decision. They filled the entire site, every enclosure, every pillar, every carved stone, with thousands of tons of debris, flint tools, animal bones, stone chips, layer after layer after layer. This was not the result of natural burial over time. This was intentional, organized. It would have required the same massive coordinated effort as building the site in the first place. And when it was done, Gobekli Tepe simply vanished, swallowed by the earth, hidden beneath a man-made hill, invisible to the world for the next 10,000 years. Why? Why would the builders spend generations constructing the greatest sacred site in human history and then deliberately bury it? What happened? What changed? What were they trying to hide or protect? Some archaeologists believe it was a ritual act, a deliberate closing of the sacred site, like capping a holy well. The burial was an act of reverence, not destruction. Others believe something catastrophic happened, a climate event, a social collapse, or perhaps a conflict so devastating that the survivors chose to seal away their most sacred place forever rather than let it fall into enemy hands. There is a third theory, and it is the most unsettling of all. Some researchers believe the site was buried specifically to preserve it, that the builders knew, somehow, that what they were sealing away was too important to lose, that they were leaving a message, a time capsule, buried deliberately for a future people, perhaps even for us, to one day uncover and understand. But understand what exactly? Chapter 5, The Lost Civilization Theory. Now we enter the territory that mainstream archaeology is deeply uncomfortable with, but the evidence demands we go there. Because Gobekli Tepe does not stand alone. Scattered across the ancient world, from Turkey to Egypt to Peru to Indonesia, there are sites of impossible age and impossible sophistication that our current historical timeline simply cannot explain. Gunung Padang in Indonesia, a stepped pyramid that may be 25,000 years old. The Sphinx in Egypt. Geological evidence suggests it was eroded by water, meaning it could be far older than 12,000 years. Underwater structures off the coast of Japan. The Yonaguni Monument, submerged at the end of the last ice age, over 10,000 years ago. Sunken ruins that look unmistakably man-made. What if all of these sites point to the same conclusion? What if, before the last ice age ended, before the great floods that reshaped coastlines worldwide, there was an advanced human civilization? A civilization sophisticated enough to build temples, track stars, organize thousands of workers, and develop symbolic communication. A civilization that was devastated or destroyed when the ice age ended and sea levels rose dramatically. The survivors would have scattered, traumatized, struggling to rebuild. And over generations, the memory of what they had built would fade into myth, into legend, into stories of gods and giants and lost golden ages. Plato wrote about Atlantis, a great civilization that vanished beneath the ocean in a single catastrophic day and night. Most historians dismiss this as allegory. But what if Plato was preserving a genuine cultural memory? What if the gods described in ancient Sumerian, Egyptian, and Hindu texts, the great teachers who arrived after catastrophe and gave humanity the gifts of agriculture, astronomy, and law, what if those were survivors? Survivors of a civilization far older and more advanced than anything in our history books. People who carried their knowledge across a devastated world and built places like Gobekli Tepe to make sure it was never forgotten again. Chapter 6. What the science actually says. Now, let's be honest. Let's separate the proven facts from the compelling theories, because the truth of Gobekli Tepe is extraordinary enough without embellishment. What we know for absolute certain, Gobekli Tepe is real. It has been carbon dated to approximately 9,600 BC. It is the oldest known monumental architecture on Earth. This is established peer-reviewed science. We know it was built by hunter-gatherers because no evidence of permanent settlement or agriculture has been found at the site itself. The builders lived elsewhere and came here specifically to construct and use this place. We know the site was deliberately buried around 8,000 BC. We know the carvings are sophisticated. We know the site required massive social organization. These facts alone overturn our previous understanding of prehistoric humans. What we do not yet know: the exact purpose of the site, the full meaning of the symbols, who the central pillar beings represent, and why the burial was carried out. These questions remain genuinely, frustratingly open. Only about 5% of the total site has been excavated so far. The full extent of Gobekli Tepe stretches across an area the size of 20 football fields. What lies beneath the surface, we can barely imagine. Ground-penetrating radar surveys suggest there are at least 16 more enclosures still buried, more pillars, more carvings, more secrets. The story we know today may be just the prologue of a far larger, far older tale. Chapter 7. The Implications. So what does all of this mean? Why does it matter to you, sitting here, watching this video, thousands of years removed from that dusty Turkish hilltop? It matters because Göbekli Tepe forces us to ask the most fundamental question of all. What are human beings really? What were we capable of before history, before writing, before everything we call civilization? If our ancestors, with stone tools, no metal, no wheels, could organize thousands of people, carve masterful art, track the stars, and build monuments that have lasted 12,000 years, then what does that say about human potential? What does it tell us about what we are capable of, when driven by belief, by purpose, by the need to create something that outlasts a single human life? Göbekli Tepe is not just an ancient temple. It is proof, carved in 12,000-year-old limestone, that the human spirit has always reached towards something greater than itself. It always has. It always will. Ending only 5% has been dug up. 95% of Göbekli Tepe still lies buried beneath the earth. And somewhere, in that unexcavated darkness, the full answer may be waiting. An answer to who we really are, where we truly came from, and what extraordinary things our ancestors were capable of, long, long before the first page of recorded history was ever written. So here's the question I want to leave with you today. If Göbekli Tepe proves that civilization is far older and far more complex than we ever believed, what else have we gotten wrong about human history? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this video made you see history differently, if it cracked something open in your mind, please like and subscribe. Because next week, we are going even deeper into another buried secret, another forgotten chapter of human history. Another mystery that the textbooks never told you, and trust me, you will not want to miss it.